Good morning, everybody. Oh, man. It has been quite the morning already, so I apologize for the welcome to live TV, everybody. Hello. Good morning. Welcome to Invisible Condition. It's not all in your head, okay? I'm your host, Jeff Pearson, and, we created this show for you because we know that, we wanted everybody with an invisible condition to know beyond the shadow of a doubt that they have a voice, they have a community, and they're not alone. You're not alone. And we're here to reinforce that. So I am going to do something a little different today. Instead, I'm going to play a clip real quick, and then I'll be right back. And then we'll dive into, who our guests are today. So you're probably going to recognize this guy. Anybody that's watched any little bit older movies, but check it out. Here we go.
And then when they become after they're 16 years old, it's like jumping off a cliff. And there's very little support and very little help for them to make the transition into becoming working and creative people in the society. And that's the one thing that Next Step can provide. I commend you for
it. I love that guy. Man, he passed away way too soon. Paul Newman, man. Is that cool or what? So if you got tied in with Paul Newman, you got to be doing something right? So with that in mind, today we are chatting with two people today. We're going to have two people on the show. It's going to be cool. So Next Step is the organization we're talking about today, backed by Paul Newman, obviously. Right? Come on. Next Step provides services for young people with life-threatening illnesses. So we'll get into kind of all they do during today's show, but we understand that this is going to be a great show for everybody watching. This is going to be so cool, and I'm so excited to have two people in particular on. Kepler is one guest, and he facilitates the programs and develops programs and curriculum, brainstorming new education games based on, something he calls minute to win it knowledge. We're going to get into that. Or working with youth task force type stuff to figure out discussion topics for any upcoming Campferences. Campference? There's another word we're going to have to dive into. So he is our multi-talented hands-on program man. So he's got about 12 years of experience designing and delivering youth development programming for youth living with special healthcare needs. So he's awesome. We're gonna talk to him, and then we have Casey, and she has two roles at Next Step. She helps keep the seriously ill participants safe and healthy, which is huge. Got to do that as nursing director, and she also helps build and maintain relationships with program partners and participants. So she has nearly 20 years of experience as a registered nurse, which is amazing. Thank you for that. That's really cool. In a variety of settings, so that's super helpful for her in the program. She absolutely loves her role at Next Step because she gets to spend time getting to know people, which is why we're going to get along great. I love getting to know people too, and that's what we're going to do here right now. I'm going to bring them on camera, and we'll introduce them. So here comes Kepler. Good morning, Kep. And here is Casey. Good morning, Casey.
Morning out, everybody.
All right, here we go. So, man, this is cool. This is a little different. I'm not used to having more than one person on the screen with me, so this will be fun. It'll be fun, be darting all over the place. So Casey, can you give us a brief overview of the mission and vision of Next Step?
Sure. Thank you for that. So kind of very simply stated, at Next Step, we work to empower young people living with serious or chronic illnesses to create their brightest futures through community, music, and mentorship. That's like our basic of what we want to do. I know we're going to dive into what all of that means in the next hour, but that's kind of our tagline.
I love it. I love it. So anybody in the audience out there, anybody know a young adult with a chronic or life-threatening condition? Stay tuned. This is your hour right here. Resources, programs. I mean, we're going to get into how to connect with Next Step. It's going to be, this is your spot. Stick around. So Kepler, could you share a little bit with us about your journey and what inspired you to become involved with youth development programming, and specifically for those with special needs? Like, where'd you come from there?
Yeah. Firstly, yes, I would be happy to. Firstly, though, thank you so much for having us on. We are
Absolutely.
So grateful to be here and to talk about Next Step.
Yeah.
I think it's so cool that you played the Paul Newman clip, because that's actually where I got into this work, is working at the Hole in the Wall Gang Camp, the summer camp. Casey did as well as our executive director, Bill Kubicek. And yeah, that's where it started for me. I was in college and needed a summer job and was like, sure, I'll try this once. And then ended up working there for something like 4 or 5 years. And I think what inspired this for me was this, you kind of go into a job like that thinking, having an image in your head of what it means and what it looks like to be a sick kid. And then what happened in my first summer is that I realized, there were a couple things. One was that I realized in being there, I was like, oh, no, these aren't sick kids. These are kids who just happen to be sick or have a chronic condition that impacts them in some way. And what's actually profoundly important for them is that they actually just get to be kids. That was like the most magical part of that space. It wasn't until my last 2 years working there when I ran a program called the LIT program, where I got to work with older teens, so 17 to 20-year-olds who had graduated from camp, but were still in this place where, Paul Newman said it really well, it's like the 16 you get pushed off of a cliff. And what they were needing is authentic space to have real conversations about everything, about being a adult, about being a young adult with a chronic illness, about school, about college, about all the things. And I just fell in love with the space of helping them ask really good questions to help them find their own answers. And when I found Next Step, which is an organization that explicitly works with young adults between 16 and 29 who have a chronic illness, that's what I realized. That's what we do there, is to help them get into a safe space with each other to be able to ask the questions that can help them find their right answer. And that's such a profound gift, to be able to be in that space with folks and just help them explore.
That's amazing. I feel like chronic condition or not, I feel like 16 to 29-year-olds, especially in the last few years, everybody needs that,
Mm-hmm.
It would be really cool. It would have been a much easier transition into the work world if I had some targeted, specific, there's no such thing as a stupid question, right? Kind of guidance, after we graduated high school. I feel like they just throw us into the deep end without a life jacket and say, all right, go, So
what I would offer there is, Yes. So all of it.
Yes.
Me too. I don't know if you've seen those shirts that adulting, like 1 star, half a star. It's very real. And one of the
Yes.
things that we tell our young people is that, you know, or at least how some of our programs team will talk about it a little bit, is that sometimes we think of our program as it's really like a program to help you think about adulting, but the ticket in is really the chronic illness because and this is, and while I think that transition period of life is actually challenging, it's, you know, developmentally appropriate for everybody to kind of go through challenges as you know, work on your identity and, you know, build competencies, get into the work world, um, build a life.
Yeah.
But for young adults living with chronic illnesses, the challenges are different. It's not about better or worse. That's not the comparison. It's really that they're fundamentally different, and that the ways that you actually have to navigate them are just different than some of their peers who don't have to navigate that world as well.
Yeah,
So.
totally. I love that. Well said. Casey, with your extensive, like you have a nursing background that goes, I mean, you have a great background.
Don't know how long. That makes me really old if it's
I mean, every day is different, right? But how do you balance the role of nursing director with the role of program partner, like relationship builder? Like you've got both of them going. How do you juggle that?
Definitely. Well, I was introduced to Next Step through my connection, like Kepler said, at camp, as their nursing director. And I started almost 10 years ago here with Next Step, just helping during their Campference season. I know we're going to dive into what that word means in a little bit, but for now, just a mystery to enjoy. But that was to help make sure folks were safe and healthy enough to be at that space and just triage any, you know, issues that they have while they're with us in that, you know, residential space. So I still get to do that. That's definitely one of my favorite spaces to be with our young people and to help, you know, keep them safe and healthy during our programs. But then this new role for me, I often I don't remember the name of it, but I think my business card says partnership coordinator, right? That's my new title. This has been a role that's existed in Next Step, but I took it on about 6 months ago. And for me, it's really about coming full circle, right? We have to have young people in our programs for them to be successful. And the way that we often find those young people is through, you know, associations like the Hydrocephalus Association or hospitals, care centers that people are being served there by their providers. So this role of partnership coordinator helps to do both of that really fluidly, actually. So you know, just building relationships is what I like to think they both are doing, right? Building relationships with our young people to make sure they feel safe and connected during our program so that they'll come to me if they're not feeling well to get the care they need. But then also building relationships with, you know, not only hospitals and other organizations to find young people that need our program, but also we don't do it all. Like Kepler said, we serve folks who are 16 to 29. So we hope that people continue to grow on and there's other resources that are out there. So part of my role I find is to also see what other things exist there so that, you know, if there's a need that our young people have, or as they're starting to get a little bit older and moving on to another stage of their life, that we still have other things to offer for them as well. So it's just building that and finding out what is out there. It's sometimes hard to find that on your own. Some of these things exist, but some not as much as others. So just building all of that so that people can feel, you know, really safe and supported in that position.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, it's true. It just because you get you hit, like I was saying before, you know, with the high school, you get out of high school and they just kick you off the boat and force you to swim. You know, just because you're 30 doesn't mean magically I know. Okay, now I'm good.
Right.
Thank you.
Right.
You know, sometimes you need a little more. So yeah, it's good to. So I'm sure you got your hands full because there's a lot of organizations out there that I'm sure are happy to help, but they got to know you're out there and you got to know they're out there.
Right. Definitely.
Yeah, totally. Well, Kepler, could you tell us about the importance of using games and activities to help youth at Next Step? Because that's really cool.
Yeah. Finally, we tap into my vast knowledge of minute-to-win-it games. No. So the minute-to-win-it thing in my profile is really just it's about games. And I love playing games. I think they're fun. I think they're just great ways for people to kind of connect. But what's really important about that modality, really, in the work that we do is that, one, I think it's about creating space for fun. I think all too often we focus on, do the work, do the thing, and if it's not, people need motivation, and if it's not a little fun, if it's not enticing, you're not exactly always going to be motivated to do it and engage. Two, the second thing I love about games and activities is that, in addition to fun, it's really a great way to help people build connections. So many of the young people who come to our programs, one of the things that I know is that there's this feeling of isolation, if not real physical isolation, but this feeling of like, I'm the only one. And when you come to a program like ours, and that's the reality that like, oh, not many people understand me, it can be incredibly intimidating. Like, you can walk in and you see all these people, and immediately, there's anxiety, there's all these feelings of, what's happening? And I find that the games actually help break some of that down in the meaningful ways that help people authentically connect to each other, in ways that are just beyond like, I like pie, do you like pie, right? Like, like you're giving them something to work on and puzzle on together, and they're able to find their own little ways of coming together. And the third reason I love games and activities is because, frankly, it's how we learn. I think we sleep on that in the society all the time, that like play, any kind of play, is actually a space for creativity. It's a space to be silly. It's an opportunity to learn something about ourselves, something about the way that we think, perhaps shift our perspective a little bit, and just be creative. And that's so, so important, particularly the creativity element when you're a young adult living with a chronic illness and you've got unique challenges to solve. And you're looking at your peers who are like doing it this one way. And it's like, well, that way might not be your way. And so you've got to be a little creative about how you approach it. And I think the games give us a space to do that together and explore together and problem solve in ways that I know that people don't think about that all the time, but that's actually the reason why we do it, because it actually does help you shift your perspective just a little bit and build authentic connection.
Well, and sometimes it's about the learning part, right? It's like people say, well, you go to school, and like we've got 3 teenagers in the house, so and 2 of them are still in high school, and they're like, the homework and and I'm like, all right, look, you're not going to remember 90% of the stuff you learn in high school in 5 years. But the important thing is,
you're lucky.
If you're lucky. But the important thing is you're learning how to learn. It's not so much you have to memorize all this crap. It's because most of it, I mean, come on, let's be real. Nobody uses trigonometry unless you're like a rocket scientist or something. But the idea of learning it, like learning how to learn, is what you're in school for. So same thing with like that's kind of like what you're doing. You're helping people figure out how to learn. You know. So what's your favorite game?
Oh, how much time do we have?
30 seconds. No.
Thank you. That's actually
30
helpful.
seconds or less. What's your 2 favorite games?
Okay, I'm going to take a minute. So I think my favorite activity that we've done, this is less a game, but the reason why I love this is because it's a really great way to do 3 things. 1, it's a little playful. 2, it actually gets people in a space where they're telling stories, which is actually really important. And 3, it's funny. Like, when you do it right, it's funny. And this activity is called, it's appropriately inappropriate limericks. The basic framework of this is that you tell young people, and you put them in some groups, and you say, hey, I would love for you all to make some limericks about the following categories. And we create the categories, they shift based on the program, but essentially it'll be like relationships, stupid things people have said about my chronic illness, being a young person, period, having no money, and we get silly with it, we have fun. And or medical transition, that's been another one. And then they'll work together in their groups and they'll write these limericks. But to do that, they have to share. And the reason why we frame it as an appropriately inappropriate limericks is not that they're all entirely inappropriate in any kind of way like that, but I think it breaks. It gives people a little space so they can be a little silly. So if it's cool, I'd love to read one or two to give you an example of like what it is.
You know what? Hold that thought. We'll do it. That's the first thing we'll do when we come back from the break. How about that?
Perfect.
All right, sweet. I'm going to take you guys off screen then, and then we'll do a commercial, and then I'm looking forward to those. All right, here we go. Whoops. Nope. There we go. All right. Okay. This 3 screens thing's throwing me off still. All right, everybody. Here we go. We're going to go to a commercial, and then we will hear some cool stuff. Kep's going to hook us up. So here we go. Stick with us, and then and then in the next segment, we're also going to hear about what a Campference is, which I'll learn with you. How about that? So we'll see you in a couple of minutes.
Never once have I been a part of a group that is as supportive, as caring, as loving.
Being here, people could relate to everything you've been going through.
I don't feel different anymore. I feel like part of a community.
A lot of times we all walk around in the world and we feel like, oh, we're the only one. And this is a place where you get to come and you get to meet a lot of other young people who are pretty much in the same place, and that bond, that friendship, coolest thing I've ever seen.
It's been one of the greatest experiences I've ever had in my life. The connections I've forged with people have made each conference absolutely unforgettable.
There's an age gap with people around my age, and they're really looking for fun things to do, and this provides a wonderful social environment. So it does mean a lot to me and the other people, because it provides a chance that we may not have had otherwise to forge friendships and work on social skills.
Hi, Eva Baca-Currents here, and I am the host of One Punch Superstars, where we meet real people who chose to fight for their hopes and their dreams and become the champions of their destiny. You can find us on Achieve TV every Tuesday and Wednesday at noon Mountain Standard Time, right here on E360 TV.
All right. I have to say, when I listened to that ad, the clip that you sent that we played right after the break there, the song that's going in the background. We have a minor league ballpark in town here, minor league baseball team, and every time they hit a home run, that's the song that plays. So when I heard that, I was like, oh, all right, home run, it's a great song. So anyway, okay, cool. So Kepler, before the break, you were talking about reading us some stuff. Go for it.
Yeah. So I'll just read one. And
what are we reading? Just to recap, so people.
Oh, right.
They're just joining us.
This is one of the appropriately inappropriate limericks written by one of our groups that I
just calling it that makes me chuckle. Okay.
Right. And this came from the sickle cell program, one of the sickle cell programs that we ran. But I think it'll land for a lot of the folks who might be listening. So it goes like this. With sickle cell, things are invisible, and just because it's not usual, my pain is not admissible. I hope I'm allowed to share. Will you allow you to care? I hope I'm not just dismissible. And you know, some of them are funny. Some of them, like that one, I think cuts right to the heart of, you know,
Yeah.
really wanting to connect, but you have to give it a frame. And that's what those games and activities allow it to do, is give it a frame so that they could get at some of those things like that.
That's great. That was good. That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Who came up with that? Like, that's pretty good.
It was just a group of young people.
Oh, it was a group thing. Okay,
yeah,
cool.
yeah. We always try to do stuff in groups.
Yeah.
Because I think that's the sharing, that's the connection, and you need, and honestly, that's why they come, to meet other people.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. So Kepler, can you just elaborate a little bit on what is a Campference? What
Yes.
you got there?
Camp. It is a word that is a fusion word. I like to think of it.
Yeah.
So you have camp, and think all things childhood, fun, staying up all night with your friends, all those things. And then you got conference, and conferences, for, you know, those of us adults who've gone to them, you know, that's about networking and information gathering, right? And so Campference, because we work with, you know, young adults, teens and young adults, is both. So we try to capture the spirit of fun, and much like that you would get at camp, while providing them opportunities to be building a peer network of other young people living with chronic illnesses. And we create opportunities for them to get information, both from from speakers or panels that we put on, but also from each other, where they get to share knowledge that they have, and something that, you know, helps someone else, and vice versa.
Well, build community, right? That's
Yeah.
It's all about, I mean, that's the main thing, I think, is making sure people know they're not alone.
Yep.
And that's another good way to do it. So that's awesome. I love that. So Casey, how does Next Step empower young adults to listen to their bodies, find their voices, and advocate for their health needs? Like, I know that's all built in there, but how do you go about that?
Yeah, so I like to think, so Kepler talked about Campference as a safe space to share stories, but also Campference might be, for some young people, maybe the first time they've really been away from home, maybe the first time they really had to manage their own health in their own space, right? Especially if you've grown up with a chronic condition. Oftentimes our parents or caregivers are the ones who are managing it because they need to, right? Because you're busy being a kid and just enjoying life.
Yeah.
And understand how to take all the things. Just, it's time for medication, you take it, right? So someone who's 16, or you can have some of the older adults who, depending on their condition, right, this 4 days or whatever away from home might be the first time they're really managing it. And that is part of my job ahead of time, to make sure that folks are appropriate to be in the space and that they can do that. But for example, if someone comes to Campference and they're not feeling great, Casey, I'm hurting, I'm having some pain, or I'm having some flare up of my condition, what do I do? So I feel like, everyone, you're an expert in your own body. I have no idea what's happening, and I trust that whatever you say, whether it's pain or some other feeling or something, that it's happening, right, as you say it. So for them to listen to their bodies and really figure out, is this different? Is this better? Is this worse than I was before? And then using their voice to say, I might ask questions like, well, has this ever happened before? Maybe it has, maybe it hasn't, right? But what have you done at home, like when this happens? What has worked for you? What hasn't worked for you? And then an opportunity for them to practice in this space with hopefully somebody they find, confident in my ability, is to then say, what would you like to try, right? This is their chance for what they want to do. And assuming it's an appropriate intervention, there are sometimes I'm like, well, that's not probably the best choice. Let's talk about another plan. And then, but the idea is for them to partner in that space. And I'm really there, I find, as like a coach to help them through the things they already probably know, because especially by the time they get to us, that 16 to 29 range,
yeah,
a lot more than sometimes they even give themselves credit for, right? Mm-hmm. They've been in it, they've managed it, but maybe they haven't had the chance to really practice it. So listening, using their voice, asking questions, we might go back and forth, and then giving a chance to practice that and advocate for that. And then, of course, just checking in with them throughout the time. And how did that feel? Do you like the way that worked? Did you want to try something different? And here's some other options. I think being able to just give them that opportunity to practice and then make some mistakes in a safe space is definitely what we're all about. It's what I love to do for them, or with them.
That's awesome. Well, and sometimes it's like, this reminds me of, when parents tell their kids something like 10,000 times and it doesn't sink in. Yeah. And then the out of town expert with a briefcase comes, the new teacher at school or their new friend or whatever. They tell them the exact same thing verbatim, word for word, and they're like, "Oh, okay," and they do it. You know, I think
this has happened at Campference too, right? We have some folks who maybe they need to take a daily medication, you know, or someone with sickle cell might need to take their hydroxyurea or whatever, something. And their provider, their parent has been trying to tell them forever to do these things. And they're like, whatever. But then they sit in this space and they hear from some other young person, whether it's a shared condition or something else, where they're like, I've really struggled to do this, but I realized in order to feel my best and to do my best, I need to take my medication. And then they're like, oh, I'm going to take my medication.
Oh.
That sounds like a great idea. You know?
What did I just say? Yeah, exactly.
So it needs to come from within, right? We all know that. We're all the same too, right? It needs to be like my idea in order to feel like it was a good one. So just helping them practice trusting themselves and that their ideas, they can be wrong. So we all make mistakes, and it's okay to do that. But we all hopefully will learn from them as well. So.
I don't think that ever goes away either. I think it was like a month ago. I said something. I was like, "Hey, maybe I should do this," and my wife was like, "Yeah, I've been telling you that for like 6 months." You know, so it's like, it's like, oh, okay. So that you never grow out of that, I guess.
No,
apparently,
so. Lots of time to practice. It
right. So Kepler, I got a phrase that I want to ask you about that I saw that is your thing. Vast minute to win it. What? Tell me about that.
I don't. Well, so really what that refers to is that a huge part of my job, both as program director and then also as one of the facilitators in our programs, is to come up with games and activities that help young people do some of the things that we've talked about already. So that brings energy and fun, that helps them, share bits of their stories and build community, and also creates opportunities for them to learn and shift perspectives a little bit. So that's really what that refers to. And then at a period of time, I did use a lot of minute to win it games.
Jeff, there's like a show where it's like a style of games, right? You have 1 minute to do this challenge and to win it. So I think it's
okay.
For a minute.
Yeah. I got you now.
Like imagine stacking cups as a group.
Yeah.
And, you have to do that. So it's just
okay.
So that's when it is actually like a thing. But they're fun. They're fun games to play around the family room table.
Yeah. But and then there's also there's two ways that we've used them, right? So sometimes we'll use games like that, and it's literally just about like, oh no, we need a team challenge, we need some energy, we need some fun. Boom, do it. 60 seconds, go.
Yeah.
And those have their place. The cool part is the meaning making sometimes that we can add to it. So even games like stacking cups, right? Like, you can give a team a minute to do that, and then they'll do it this way. And then you ask them to do it 2 or 3 more times. And then they come up with more innovative ways of getting at it and can actually do it faster. And sometimes, and what we're able to draw from that, like make meaning of a little bit, is talking about like, what is it like to go to the hospital for the first time? What's it like to go to the hospital for the 10th time or the 100th time? And all of that comes from like having to stack cups 2 or 3 times. So those are different kinds of ways that we're able to leverage games like that. So yes, fun and energy, we can totally do them in that way and often do. But sometimes the juice, as it were, comes from, okay, we've done this thing, it's very silly. You don't think that there's a point to it, but we're able to draw out some real life kind of situations from it.
Nice. So it's almost like you're kind of almost tricking them into getting real with what's going on by playing a game in a good way.
I will neither confirm nor deny that my job is to trick young people to do anything.
Yeah. I mean, you gotta have
right. It's also about breaking down that barrier, right? Like you come into a space, you don't know anybody, you can be silly and break, have the things.
Yeah.
I mean, those kind of things definitely serve lots. They have lots of goals for them, but it's also just fun to have fun.
So the one thing I'll offer about the games too, because the tricking element is what's coming up for me, is the fact that I think some part of it is really about, well, yes, a little bit of trickery, but the other part of it is setting the context, right? And I think that's what you and Casey were talking about earlier, about like, why is it that somebody has been saying this to you for like 6 months, but now is the time that it clicks. And sometimes the context has to matter, right? Like it has to matter in a way that's meaningful for you to make sense and make meaning of it in that moment. And so that's what the games allow us to do is, that's why young people are like, oh, you said that? Now I want to do it, but my provider, my social worker, my parents, everybody has been saying this to me for 5 years. It's because the context wasn't there yet. And rest assured too, like all of that mattered, right? But it has to be in a particular context. So yeah.
Yeah. No, that's totally, I get it. Yeah, that's great. Because it's true. It's true. Once you get, it's just like anything else. If you're not ready for it, it's not going to happen. So yeah, you're just providing that space and that context, which is awesome. So, so Casey, can you share just, I know it's, it might be, don't like no names or whatever, but I'm just curious. I just want people to hear an awesome story about an experience of you witnessing a young person's growth or self-advocacy or something, something just like broke through, about the involvement with Next Step. Yeah. I'm sure you got tons of them. But.
Right. Like there's a flood of things. So, I mean, I would say like broadly, it's not always like, it's hard to think of. I do have one in mind, which I'll tell you, but, it's not just one person. It really is something that we have as staff and volunteers who get to be there. You really see it happening to almost everyone. And in these tiny little moments, like for example, if it's the first time they come to one of our in-person programs or Campferences, like really overwhelmed, just taking it all in. They might do just a lot of sitting, quiet, reflecting, listening, maybe not really even sharing their story, which is fine, right? And then, but just really hearing everyone else. And then, all right, they got a taste for it. They're not quite sure. They want to come and do a little more. So the second time they come and they might start sharing a little bit more about themselves or, really kind of diving in, making new connections, new friends. By the third time, they're like a leader in the group. They're sharing the story. They're asking the questions. They're doing the things. But I can think of one young person specifically that's been part of our programs for a few years now. And they recently are working on, transitioning from pediatric care to adult care, and that whole world to navigate. That's hard for anybody, but especially when you have real serious and chronic conditions. And this person actually needed to have a surgery that they needed to not only find a new care team and find someone who was willing to do the surgery, believed that this was a problem for them and needed to get done, but they were able to navigate that space, finding new providers, advocating for that surgery, speaking up for themselves, and did it pretty independently. I think their parents were there as a kind of a safety net if it wasn't going well, but I think they did it almost entirely by themselves and were able to recently have that surgery, already feeling better, even, one day post-op, and just really feeling proud of the fact that not only they're feeling good because they did the thing that they needed to do, but were able to work through it on their own with the things that they learned a lot due to their time with us at Next Step. So that definitely
is huge.
Yeah.
That is so cool. Yeah. I mean, that's amazing. It's so cool. And it's cool for you guys. It's amazing for you guys to see that, right? To be like, oh,
yeah,
came this far,
and watch it from behind. It's just like a little, I have little proud mama moments of these things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. It works. This is, it sinks in and it works. Yay. Oh, it's amazing. I know that's like the best feeling, especially when you're from a distance and you're hearing this, and that's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm gonna pop this comment up here because I thought it was kind of cool. I don't know if you know this, but I know this guy.
That's a familiar name.
Oh, Bill, you're too kind.
Oh, Bill, you're too kind. Figured I'd pop that up there for you. So, but we get these comments, and I just thought that one was pretty cool. So, anyway, all right. Well, believe it or not, it's that time again. We're gonna go to one last commercial break, and then on the other side, we're gonna be talking about hope. Because if you don't have hope, you're dead in the water already. So, and you guys are doing an amazing job of spreading the hope. So we're gonna rein that in here as soon as we come back. So thank you for being here, everybody, and we will see you soon. you go. I have, you know what? I actually have a question for Casey before we dive into the last stuff here. But I know the type of organizations you are is I mean, it's kind of like Hydro with Hope for us. Our organization too is, it's all about the collaborations, right? It's all about relationships that you've made with other companies and other people and partnerships. Can you just highlight a couple of those that Next Step has formed to enhance, like to grow the services you guys provide?
Oh yeah, that's great. Yeah, this is the moment where I'm accepting my Grammy and I might forget someone. So if I answer, I apologize up front, right? But well, I would love to first put out Hydrocephalus Association, right? I know Amanda was on with you guys recently, and she shared us with you. So without her, we wouldn't be here, right? But we've had some young people in our program with hydrocephalus, and sometimes even other chronic conditions with that. But actually, I reached out, to one of our young people whose mom is part of the thing, who helped to introduce me to Amanda. So I love how that's all connected, because what a beautiful community. But we've done some other work with them as well, and looking forward to just continuing to do that. But a lot of our partners work to, share the programs that we do, but also some other things as well. But we have a lot of partnerships with hospitals and care centers in, the Boston area. That's where we're based out of. Even New York City, the Washington, D.C. area, looking to grow that as well. But we have folks with a lot of partnerships with programs for, sickle cell disease, cancer, HIV. Those are some of our, sort of top serving things, but we're looking to expand more for other chronic conditions. Or we've had some new relationships with, it's a mouthful, but neurofibromatosis. That's a chronic, rare genetic condition that can lead to lots of things. So always looking to kind of expand it so more people know about us. But one thing that Kepler and I and our program team have worked to do is this thing, I'm not really supposed to call it the mobile program, but so I don't know what to call it. It's just not a new cell phone company, but it's a place where I think mobile is when we come to you, right? But we have a chance to come to providers, whether, we, even with the Hydrocephalus Association, they have weekly meetings, right? Support groups we kind of took over their 20s group on a Saturday night, where we got to come and do some of these fun games and have some music and just enjoy and share that. But it's a chance for us to come to people who are already serving and working with these young adults with these chronic conditions and partner with them to say, what conversations are you trying to have, right? We talked about like, oh, we need our folks to take their medications, but they don't want to. But we have people come in a room, play these games, have an opportunity to build that conversation, right? Our superpower is getting those young people in a space where they feel comfortable and confident to use their voice to share their stories, and then they get to learn from each other. So we've been doing these programs where we go to those partnerships and providers and kind of offer that one, not only to just move the conversation along, hopefully helping those people as they're caring for them, but also as a chance for us to get to meet more young people and kind of bridge that gap from, it's hard when you're at an appointment and the social worker's like, oh, you should do this cool thing called Next Step. They play games and they write limericks, and it's like, what is? I don't even know what that means, right? It's just hard to process. They do this Campference. What is that word, right? But this way we get a chance to go there and meet folks, in person, and they can get a chance to see like, oh, okay, that's kind of cool. I'd be interested, which we love to do that, and also just again building other partnerships with other things like the American Cancer Society and things like that, and just be able to have other people who can share our programming for what we do for this group of folks. So I'm sure there's more, and we're working to build that, that sort of net for not only resources, but other ways that we can connect with providers as well to help them reach their young people.
I love it.
Yeah.
That was a great acceptance speech. That was fantastic. If you left anybody out, I'm sure they'll be fine.
Yes, I will take my award now and head off.
That's right. That's right. Hold it proud. That's right. Okay, just hold it. Yeah. Well done. So I want each of you to answer this question individually, but I ask two questions of each of all my guests, and one of them is, how do you, Kepler, Casey, how do you find hope?
Rock, paper, scissors.
Yeah,
okay.
I think for me, finding hope during like a difficult time or something is to remember that so far, up to this point, I have survived 100% of my hard days, right? There have been things that have been awful or really struggled, and I didn't want to get out of bed, or I didn't want to talk to anybody, but it didn't take me out, and I'm here. So trying to remember that and kind of build that up in myself, but also remembering that I have a network of people who love me, whether it's my family or friends or coworkers, and I can turn to them and say, "Oh, I'm having a really hard time," and they can tell me that I'm awesome, so they don't forget that. Or just like, they could just come and pull me out of bed, or just come and sit next to me and be like, "You can do this, I promise." Or just sit there and share the space and be like, "This is really awful right now, and I'm sorry you're experiencing it. Let's just sit together and, Netflix and chill," or whatever, right? But just remembering that we're not alone. We can always turn to people, I would say.
That's awesome.
Keep going. Yeah.
I love what you said there. I'm actually gonna put it on the screen because I thought it was awesome. I've survived 100% of my hard days so far.
Yeah. They haven't taken you yet, so.
I mean, it's true. It's true, man.
And that's and that's a perspective thing, right? Like,
yeah, it really is. It really is. So go for it, Kepler. Where do you find hope?
Oh, okay. So I want to approach this in two ways. So on a personal level, one of the ways that I find hope or create space for hope in my own life is that I have to remember that when things are really challenging, part of the reason why that is probably because I'm looking at the problem. I'm looking at it way too closely, and when you do that, it just becomes a really big thing. And so all of the folks I work with, and people who know me really well, know that I have a saying, and it's like, small steps, big success. And what that means for me is that I just have to not take the whole thing as a big chunk. Just pick. It doesn't always even matter where I start, but I just start by taking one small step, solving one tiny problem, and then I solve the other one, and another, and another, and another. And before I know it, that really, really big thing has gotten to be something a little bit more manageable. And I've moved a little bit farther along it than I probably thought I would. And so that's how I maintain hope, just personally, is just by like, okay, this feels really big. How do I make it small? And then just start somewhere. On another level, and this is a thing that I think this generally, when I think about hope for some of the young people that we serve, I think there are two things that come to mind. One is that anytime somebody comes and they've just found, like, they're like really shy and quiet on the first day, and then on the last day they're like literally screaming into a microphone for karaoke, and they're like surrounded by a group of people that they couldn't talk to before, a couple days before, that honestly fills my heart with all the smiles and all the hope, because it's what we're wanting for them to not feel alone. The other thing that happens quite often that I love, and it gives me hope professionally and also a little bit personally, there's sometimes young people who find us, and in the rare disease space, sometimes you don't really have a diagnosis, or you have a couple of diagnoses, but you have like a string of symptoms that are all put together. And they'll have a conversation with me, and they'll have a conversation with Casey, and we'll say, yeah, sure, okay, let's give this a try. And they'll meet somebody at the program who has their collection of symptoms, and that person actually has like, oh, it's this diagnosis. And the young person will leave, and I'll talk to them like a couple of months later, a year later, sometimes when they're applying to come back to a program. They're like, so guess what? I have a new diagnosis. And it was the diagnosis that I met from the person that I met there. And they had spent all this time trying to figure it out, being told by people, oh, it's not this, it's not that. And then they come and they meet another person, and it's like, oh yeah, these collection of symptoms, that's what they told me what it was. And then they'll talk to a provider, they'll get tested, and they'll do whatever the medical people, smart people, say they need to do. And then they'll find out that that's what they have. And that moment that fills me with a lot of hope, because there's something about having an answer,
Yeah. For sure. Yeah. Some people, there was one guest we had on a few weeks ago that it took her 12 years to get that answer. It's sometimes it takes a while, so once you get it, it's like,
yeah, well, you're like, oh, it's this feeling of validation, right? That's what
exactly. You've got a name to put with what you're going through, and I don't know why, but it makes a huge difference. Yeah. It's not a mystery, you know. So, yeah. Well, look, one other question, and then we only have a couple minutes left. So, what are each of you? I mean, I know everybody's gone through challenges. I know, especially probably, I mean, dealing with all the situations you get to hear from all these amazing young adults. What through all of that are you guys thankful for?
Okay. I'll speak on it a little bit. I would say challenges, they're not great, right? I mean, some folks might give everything happens for a reason, and maybe there's a space for that sometimes, but like sometimes things happen and they're really awful when they happen, right? Like there's no explanation for a child getting cancer, right? Like those things just there's no, like some of these things, it's just hard to really understand why or what. So I think similar to Kepler's idea of like, it's about how you're looking at it and perspective, right? I've heard people say, right, our programs are awesome, but there is an admission fee, right? You do have to have a chronic or serious illness to get here, which not great. But once you get through the doors, folks are like, not that I'd be happy to wish this away and wish that it never happened. But if that went away, I wouldn't have met you. I wouldn't be here. So again, it's a perspective of seeing like these things happen, and would I prefer not to have to deal with them? Sure. But knowing that somewhere along the way, each of these moments or steps have brought me to the space where I am now, either the person I am because of the challenges I went through, I now am able to use my voice, or, you know, I've been here and I've been able to find my community, right? And you know, I mean, I think all these things, like finding your voice, finding your community, and realizing you're not alone. Like it can be really isolating, but all of those steps you've taken along the way now to get here and to be able to share that space with other people and realize, right, like whether it's and we all, like, I don't like to compare my woes to someone else's, right? Because, you know, I might see on the outside, like, okay, you've had 10 surgeries, I've never even broken a bone, I mean, you know, or whatever. We all have something that we're struggling with, whether it's a learning disability or a physical thing or something that's, you know, that's just hard to see that we deal with on a regular space. I think we're all, we really are in this all together, right?
Right. Well, Kepler, in 30 seconds or less, go.
Great. For me, it's a really simple moment. Well, it's really simple moment. We run a program for young adults living with HIV, and for me, the moment that I'm like, I feel like the most gratitude a little bit is this moment when I hear a young person who started out the week saying, you know, when they would talk about themselves in a diagnosis, they would say, I'm HIV. And that's how they would talk about it. But there's a moment in the program where, and it happens every time, and it's, oh, I'm HIV positive. And it's like a simple word shift, but it's a massive perspective shift in the sense that you are not your diagnosis. And I picked that one because that's the one that first popped into my mind. But every community that we've gotten the honor and the privilege to be in, to take up space,
that's amazing,
has a version of that where they're just more than their diagnosis, and it clicks for them.
Awesome. That's so cool. I love it, man. You know what? I hate to say, I hate cutting people off, but we have like 10 seconds and I gotta go. So in like 10 or 15 seconds, how do people reach you? What's the best place to reach out to you guys?
They can find us on, they can find us on our website, nextstepnet.org, or email Casey and I, Kepler, Kepler, Casey, Casey, I know how to spell your name, at nextstepnet.org.
Awesome.
Yeah, we're also on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, those kinds of things. But you can look at us. But yeah, we're happy to find you. Feel free to reach out. We'd love to chat. So.
Love it. Well, thank you so much, guys. This has been amazing. I'm so thankful that we got this connection through the Hydrocephalus Association, and thank you for being here. I appreciate it.
Thank you
for having us.
All right, everybody. We're out of time, but I can't wait to see you next time. So Tuesday, September 5th, I'm going to have Anna on the show. She's awesome. You know what? I don't have time to tell much of her story, but please join us on Tuesday, September 5th to hear Anna's story, and, you know, have an awesome weekend, and we'll see you again next time. Thank you for being here.